How's it going, guys? I'd like to thank you guys for joining me today on the assessment portion of our lifestyle changing journey. Now, in my initial video, I mentioned exercise, the importance of exercise and form. So today, what I'm going to be showing you is the overhead squat assessment. The overhead squat assessment is a great way to identify faulty movement patterns if you are weak in certain areas of upper body or lower body. Now, this is one of the ways I choose to identify and assess other individuals and my clients and myself especially. And you can choose to use this assessment if you like. You can do some research. Regardless, you can do whatever you feel like. This is just one of many ways you can assess and identify any weak or overactive areas. So today we're going to start with the overhead squat assessment, and I'm going to do 3 different views. I'm going to do from a front view, a side view, and a back view, and I'm going to show you what things to be looking for so that way you can better assess yourself. Now, you can either record your movements, you can have somebody look for you, you can have somebody watch your movement and identify what things you are not doing. So here we go. As you can see, we're going to do the front view first so we can identify our key areas from the front view, which are going to be our feet, our ankles, and our knees. So with our overhead squat assessment, we want to first start by having our knees and our feet hip width apart or shoulder width. Now, shoulder doesn't mean way out here shoulder. Shoulder is, think of where your shoulder blades start. That's why it's much easier to just use the hips. Because too many people come out way too wide. If you do hit your inner thighs more, but the purpose of doing a proper squat and to identify any faulty movement patterns, you want to have your feet hip width apart, or whatever's more comfortable. Some folks that are smaller or larger frame might have to adjust their feet accordingly. So I've got my feet straight ahead, hip width apart. Now I'm going to take my arms overhead and I'm going to squat down, just like that. And you're going to want to do about 5 repetitions of these. I think that was 5, 4, 5, 6, whatever. So what you want to focus on, notice how my feet are staying forward. I'm going to show you some very common faulty movement patterns that you'll see people do in the gym, or it may be even you that have some of these faulty movement patterns. It doesn't mean that's a bad thing, but the purpose of this video is to help you identify those missing links so that way you can stretch with a purpose and exercise with a purpose. So we're going to start with the toes out. This is a very common faulty movement pattern you'll see with people squatting. Now what happens is when you go down like that, your knees have a tendency to go out and over your toes. Now that's going to be a problem, and the reason why a lot of people's feet go out is because their muscles on the front part of their shin, your anterior tibialis to be anatomically correct, is weak, and your calves tend to be very overactive. So it's going to be important to keep that in mind while I show you this. So if you have feet that naturally point out, or your toes slightly point out, you're going to see that in some individuals. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing, like I said before, it's just to help identify the area. So we've got our toes pointing out. So I mentioned the big areas to keep in mind when your toes are pointing out. Some things that are going to happen are your hamstrings, specifically the lateral bicep head, of your hamstring is going to be tight. Your calves are going to be naturally tight, and some weak areas are going to be your anterior tibialis, this muscle right here on the shin. So that could lead to ankle injuries, which could move on up and lead to knee injuries. That's why you want to focus on these movements so that way we can focus on fixing them. The next movement I'm going to show you is very common too for individuals that have flat feet, which could also lead to plantar fasciitis. So with the flat feet, individuals tend to pronate their feet, pronating or decreasing the arch in their foot when they squat. And as you'll see, when I do that, my knees come in. So when I'm doing that overhead squat, this may happen to you. Knees cave in inwards. And the problem with this is when your knees are coming in, your groin muscles, your adductor muscles are going to be extremely tight. So they're going to want to pull your knees in together. Now when that happens, it's a common cause of a tight IT band or a tight TFL, which I'll go over in my following videos about therapeutic exercises, muscle inhibition using a foam roller. Some of you may have heard of that before, but like I said, this is just to identify those movement patterns. And also when our knees cave in, our butt muscles, our gluteus maximus and medius, will tend to stretch out and therefore making them weaker. So you want to think of all these things when you're identifying areas that you really need to focus on stretching